So, hello everybody and welcome. Yes, welcome back here at BSN Network. Ucla back here, BSN Network. This is the BSN Network podcast here today. It is Tuesday, March 30th. Always having a good day so far and a good rest of their day. Yesterday, it is in fact Tuesday, March 30th here today. We are now only 2 days away from opening day of the MLB season. Yankees versus Blue Jays, first game on tap for us, as that game will be on Thursday. Yankees versus Blue Jays should be a good game. Start off a 162 game season, which ultimately, hopefully, ends in a World Series championship for the New York Yankees. Every fan base obviously hopes it ends in a World Series championship, and obviously I hope it ends in a World Series championship as the New York Yankees get ready to take on the 162 games ahead of them, and by the end of it, as they always say, hopefully they're holding up the trophy, and hopefully they're holding up the World Series trophy, and hopefully they're hopefully they're just, hopefully that they're, winners. That's the goal. That's the goal. Obviously, every team, the goal is to win it all. Whether you're going through a rebuild or not, you always have goals, obviously, throughout the year, but there's never a time where you're not trying to not win a championship, and that's obviously the goal here for the New York Yankees this year, especially the goal for the New York Yankees. Some teams, obviously, it's a goal, but, it's further out of reach than some other teams, like some rebuilding teams, they're not going to win the World Series, but obviously, still, you would like to see that happen if you're that fan. But I always talk about that. So, but yeah, super exciting. Baseball is right around the corner. And I was talking to someone yesterday watching the Yankee spring training game. I'm like, all right, it's the fifth inning. I'm like, all right, spring training is good and all, but let's just get to the season. Like, it's gotten to the point now where, spring training was good and all, and you're excited when spring training starts, but it gets to the point when you're in the middle towards the end of spring training, you're like, oh, just another spring training game today. Oh, spring training. Oh, can we just get to the regular season already? That's how I was starting to feel. I was kind of just getting to the point where let's just get to the season already. That's what I was waiting for, but now we're obviously here, 2 days away from the season. And we got a lot on tap for today's podcast. Nets got a good win yesterday, 112-107. It was close. We were winning by, a good amount, 10-11 the whole game. And then late, Timberwolves were just able to make a slight comeback. And the Nets were able to obviously hold it off and win 112-107. So a good win for the Nets, another gritty win. Another win that, took a lot in us. And it is against some of these teams, against the Timberwolves. But you also got to realize that, you're going to get these teams when you're a team like the Brooklyn Nets, what you have, three really good players. You have three superstars on your team in Harden, Kyrie, and KD. When you have those guys, you're going to get other teams' best efforts. You know that for a fact. You're going to get the Timberwolves going full out trying to pull off the upset. You're going to get every team's best effort. You're going to get their best lineup. You're going to get their best possible, effort out there. So the Nets got to be ready. And, that's why the Nets can't take any team lightly. And a team like the Timberwolves yesterday, you can't take lightly. And I've always said this about the Timberwolves. Yes, they're struggling. Yes, their record's terrible. But this is a team that has got a lot of young talent and has got a good future ahead of them. It's a team that very well could be a number one pick, which they could take multiple options. They could look at Cunningham or they could look at a forward. Who knows what they're going to do. But this is a Timberwolves team who are also trying to go out there and, compete. And guys like Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Malik Beasley, he obviously just came off his suspension, but he's had a good year. The Nets are going to get every team's best possible effort. So, it was good to get a win yesterday. It was closer than I would liked it to. Obviously, I find myself a lot of times late in fourth quarters, watching the game, hoping that we get a win. Sometimes it's nice to be sitting back in the fourth quarter and, knowing that you've secured a win, but the Nets got the win, and that's all that matters. We are 32-15 on the season, still the second seed in the East, but we have 2 games coming up, very easy games. We play the three worst record teams coming up. And then, obviously we have the Rockets coming up. Then we played the Timberwolves yesterday and the Pistons the other day. So we have a little bit of an easy stretch here. Tomorrow we'll play the Rockets. We have a day off today. Rangers play today against the Capitals. Big game for the Rangers. I said out of these 4 games, I would like us to go worst 2-2 at best, like 3-1, obviously 4-0. I don't think we were going to go 4-0. But I said 2-2 wouldn't be terrible. So hopefully we go 2-2 today, not 1-3 through this 4-game stretch. But we'll see how it all plays out. So these are the topics for today's podcast. As I mentioned yesterday, I'm going to talk about the Mlb Awards Predictions. So obviously the AL MVP, NL MVP, both Cy Youngs for both leagues. So AL and NL Cy Young. Then I want to get into AL and NL Rookie of the Years. Those are the main awards. You could get into, Coach Manager of the Year, all that kind of stuff. You could get into all that kind of stuff. But I decided, let me go through the main awards, the Rookie of the Year, the Cy Young, and the MVP. The Manager of the Year and all that stuff. I'll predict that when it comes towards the end of the year. Because it's kind of tough to predict Manager of the Year, especially, with some of these newer managers. It's kind of tough to predict, Manager of the Year, because it's really all how the team goes. So it's really all how the team plays out. So I would rather do these awards. I feel like it's easier to predict these awards than it is some of the other Manager of the Year awards, because there's not much you could base it off of for a Manager of the Year. Like, okay, if you have a good team, then yeah, but does that mean that you're going to win the Manager? A lot of times Manager of the Year is going to be taking a team that maybe wasn't supposed to do so good and taking them, to a playoff, like the Blue Jays did last year, and Charlie Montoyo, he took the team on certain circumstances, not playing in Toronto, and took them to the playoffs. I mean, that was good. That was a great job by him. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I got my awards here. I got all my MVPs, Cy Youngs, and Rookie of the Years. So, I'll give you them. I don't know how much I'm going to be right with them. I would imagine I'm going to get at least one or two right, just because, I think, with all these good guys out there, they're very consistent, so I would imagine something like that. But, definitely, I don't know if I'm going to get all of them right. Actually, NL MVP, I have a three-way tie. So I have three players that I think could win it. I'm going to tell you those three players. But other than that, all of them are just single players, so it should be good. But anyway, so that's what we got for the Mlb Awards predictions. Then we're going to get into some NFL news. The NFL actually Sunday, I believe, released that they will be changing up their schedule a little bit. So they are going to be adding an extra game. So it's going to be a 17-game season with 18 weeks, I believe. I believe they're still going to have that bye week in there. And I'm going to kind of talk my thoughts on it. So with the NFL, for a very long time, really since the existence of the league, as a matter of fact, I can't tell you the last time they didn't play a full 17-week season or added on to it. But this, obviously, the NFL currently, right now, is playing 16 games, 17 weeks. So obviously you would have the one bye week where, it's a rest week, your team gets off. I don't need to go through what a bye week is. Everyone knows what a bye week is. So that's what it's been. But the NFL has been discussing this for really all of last season and into this offseason about adding an extra week to the season. So they would be adding 17 weeks or 17 games, 18 weeks with still that one integrated bye week whenever that is. And that would add one extra matchup between teams. So we'll see how all that goes. I believe it would be an AFC-NFC matchup between those two teams, I believe. Because I believe the projections of the Jets' extra 17th game would be against the Eagles, which would be a little AFC-NFC matchup. So I would believe it would be something like that. Or you play AFC East, plays the NFC East, and something like that. It would be something like that. So I got to look into it. But that's kind of what the whole new NFL schedule is. So I'm going to talk my thoughts on it, kind of give you, how it could affect players, because some players are happy about it. Some players are mad. There's been a couple players that are mad. Alvin Kamara came out and expressed his frustrations that he has been mad with it. So we'll get into it. Then we'll finish off the podcast. I personally like it. Just going to let you know, but I'll talk about it. Then we'll get into the New York sports update with all the good New York sports. Rangers have a game today. March Madness continues. Houston is in the Final Four as well, along with, obviously Houston is in the Final Four, and today was the first team actually to punch their ticket to the Final Four. So they were the first team to punch their ticket to the Final Four, along with Baylor, who also punched their ticket to the Final Four, as Gonzaga will play tonight. So we'll get into all that good stuff. But anyway, with all that being said, this is the BSN podcast, and let's get right into it. So obviously, like I said earlier, as I noted earlier, we are only about 2 days. If you're counting today, it's 2 days. If you're not, whatever the case may be. But we're 2 days away from the MLB season, and we're getting ready for the MLB season. I mean, it's super exciting. Obviously, to have baseball back, and I know last season, obviously, the 60 games, and it was good and all, but, obviously, it's nice to have a full 162 again. 60 games, I get it. It was an MLB season. I can't complain because there was a lot going on that I thought there was going to be no season with the players negotiating and disagreeing on plans and stuff. I had a feeling there was going to be no season. There ended up was being a season. Obviously, it was played out, all that good stuff. So, obviously this year, I feel like it's a little more exciting because it is the full 162, and you get to see a full season. Last season, it went so quick. It was like it was opening day, and then right before, it felt like the next day was already the end of the season. It went so quick. Obviously, 60 game sprint. You had 102 less games than you usually do. And 102 games, that's more than half the season. So it's nice now that we're actually finally getting the full 162 and getting back to normal baseball and getting back to a normal season. So obviously, before every year, I do this in some leagues. Some leagues I do it. But I decided today, let me do it in the MLB. I don't know if I did it in the NFL. I might just tell you who I think will, but I usually like to go through and make predictions on what the awards are going to be. So that could be, what the Cy Young's going to be, what the MVP is going to be, and who's the Rookie of the Year is going to be. That I usually like to do. So before every year I do it. So this year I decided, I sometimes do Manager of the Year and stuff like that. I'm like, nah, I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to go through, give you my AL MVP, AL Cy Young, AL Rookie of the Year, and then follow up that with an NL MVP, NL Cy Young, and NL Rookie of the Year. To be honest, my list probably won't be too surprising to many of you, just because, it's kind of obvious, I think, who's going to win, who you think's going to win some of these awards. There's some guys in the NL that I have a three-way tie in the NL. I have three guys that I very strongly think that could win it. I left one guy off the list that I think some of you might disagree with. I could very well put him on the list. I would have no problem with it. I figured, instead of putting 4 or 5 NL Cy Young guys on the list, that's not good. So I just decided to put 3. So just saying, NL MVP, I do have a 3-way tie. But other than that, all the other awards, AL MVP, AL and NL Cy Young, and AL and NL Rookie of the Year, I have one player. So NL, there's a lot of good talent in the NL. There's a lot of, not saying that the AL doesn't have a lot of good talent, but I feel like there's 3 or 4 guys that are like really close in skill and really close in MVP that they could all 3 win it. As for in the AL, I feel like there's a little bit more of a gap of who's going to win it. Just because the guy in the AL is one of the best baseball players we've ever seen. And I'll get into that. So let's get into it. So I'll start off, obviously, with AL MVP, then get to the Cy Youngs, then get to the Rookie of the Year, and we'll get into it. Obviously, I thought this was a good topic, obviously, with MLB season right around the corner. So with all that being said, let's get into the MLB Awards Predictions. So we'll start off here with AL MVP. Like I said, this isn't crazy surprising, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say this one's crazy surprising. I would say that, many of these probably aren't surprising to you, just because of the fact that, these guys are so good, and every year you got to put their name at least in the conversation. But anyway, let's get into this. So, AL MVP, I have Mike Trout. So I got the numbers up here. So I have Mike Trout winning AL MVP. Obviously you could go a couple ways with this. So obviously you could go ahead and say, maybe Judge. If he's healthy, you could go ahead and say Judge. You could go ahead and say, many different players. Some people are really high on Bregman's. Some people really think that Bregman's going to make an impact. I'm sure, there's obviously a lot of different options out there that you could go ahead and say, this guy's going to win the AL MVP. Obviously this guy won't, this guy will, obviously that stuff. You could go many different ways. You could go ahead and say that even Springer, when healthy, he is up there with some of the best of them in the game. Obviously, he's with the Toronto Blue Jays. But right now, I would go ahead and say, that Mike Trout is the AL MVP. And I understand that, this is a guy who last season was good. He wasn't, Mike Trout that we're always used to seeing, but he was Mike Trout nonetheless. And obviously, technically last season, Mike Trout actually technically last year had a down year, considering that it was only a 60-game season. He technically actually had a down year last year, and he still was putting up big numbers. He still had a 281 batting average last season, and that was considered a down year for Mike Trout, because you got to realize, Mike Trout, people, this is a guy who we're used to seeing putting up 310, 320 batting averages every year, and going out there and absolutely just, blasting the ball out of the ballpark, and, singles, doubles. And let's talk about not just the hitting. He's one of the best center fielders in the game, if not the best center fielder in the game right now with his diving catches, always knowing where he's got to throw the ball. He's very smart in the outfield. He not only is a highlight reel, but he not only makes highlights almost every night he's out there on the field, and he's not only a guy that, makes highlights, he's not only a guy that's, when he's up at bat, your eyes are going to be glued to the screen because it's exciting to watch him. It's a guy we don't get to see every day. This is a guy who we don't get to watch every day. This is a rare occasion where we see a guy that's this good year in and year out. You a lot of times see guys go through highs and lows in their career, but Mike Trout has built consistency. It's a guy that almost every year has an above 300 batting average. His career batting average, his season average is a 304 batting average. 304 batting average. You know how hard it is to get like a 270 batting average in the MLBs, let alone get a 304. And I understand last season he had a little bit of a down year, but still his down year would have been a lot of players' career years. He still batted 281, launched 17 home runs. He was 4th in the league in home runs, and OPS, he was still 6th in the league in OPS with a 993 OPS. So this was a guy that was still top 10 in 2 categories, top 5 in 1 category. He was actually coming down to the wire in the home run race, which featured guys like Teoscar Hernandez, Trout, and obviously Luke Voit, who was the home run champion last year for the American League. So this is a guy who obviously was really good, has been really good, was allowed a little bit of a down year last year, but I don't even like to say that word because I should say he had a human year last year. Don't even want to say down year. He had a human year last year because he had a human year last year. Down year is not the right word to say because a down year for him, batting 281, cranking 17 home runs, and still having a 993 OPS, if you got that out of some players, that would be like a career year. So I'm going to say he had a human year last year. He had a year that he looked normal for once. And even then, he still didn't look normal. And not even just the batting, the fielding too. This is a guy who night in and night out is making a star, spectacular play that we all have to watch. Mike Trout. And the one thing that hurts Mike Trout is voter fatigue. Because every year he's in the conversation. We all know what voter fatigue is. This is why it's so hard to win consecutive MVPs and win multiple MVPs. Because a lot of times voters want to see different guys win it, and they won't vote for the same guy. I really believe if you're going off of straight statistics and the eye test, Mike Trout's the best player in baseball right now. I really believe that. You could go ahead and say some other guys. I truly think Mike Trout is the best player in baseball and one of the best players in baseball we've ever seen. We all know it. Mike Trout, AL MVP. And like I said, when healthy, there's a couple other guys out there. Judge could very well be in the conversation. We've seen what he can do when he's healthy. We saw what he did in his rookie year when he was healthy and stuff. Obviously, when Rookie of the Year came in second to Jose Altuve, who cheated his way to an MVP. So, we'll see how it all plays out. But definitely think Mike Trout is the AL MVP. Alrighty, so NL MVP right now, I have a 3-way tie. And you can comment down below what you think on this one. NL MVP was very tough for me. I found that AL, Mike Trout's in the AL almost every year. You got to put Mike Trout in there. I mean, you can't, right? So NL MVP was pretty hard. I guess AL you could have said, maybe a guy like Eloy Jimenez. But the thing with him is he tore his pec. So there's no way he's getting the MVP. Pre-torn pec, you could say maybe he was in the conversation, but he's not. So let's get into the NL MVP. So the NL MVP, I have a 3-way tie. Ronald Acuna Jr., Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis Jr. is my 3-way tie in the National League to win MVP. And I know what you're probably thinking right now, that you're probably thinking that I might be crazy for leaving Mookie Betts off this list. Now, like I said, I added 3 guys. I could very well add Mookie Betts to this list, but I don't want to have a 7-8 player list for the National League when I'm only supposed to pick 1. I picked 3 here, and I'm going to tell you why. All 3 of these players, I feel, are very close in skill, and they're almost the same exact player, right? Ronald Acuna, still very young, got extreme power, still a very good player, and very good in the outfield. Same thing with Juan Soto. He's very good power. He really plays the game with a lot of heart. He's also a guy that's young, still up and coming, still learning, and still got a lot of room to grow. Same thing with Fernando Tatis Jr. He obviously just signed the mega extension a couple weeks ago. This is a guy who's still young, amazing at shortstop, makes spectacular plays, still learning, got amazing power, and is on an up-and-coming, very good team. So I find these guys are all in the same position. Ronald Acuna, Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis Jr., which is why I really believe the MLB and these young up-and-coming rising stars have a very bright future ahead of them in this MLB. Because you got to realize, Acuna, bright future, he's still an up-and-coming rising star. Juan Soto, bright future, still an up-and-coming rising star. He's a star right now, but he can even exceed even greater levels. We've seen what Soto can do. We saw what he did in the Nationals playoff run. We saw what he did last season. It's a guy, too, who at times doesn't look like he's human. He does things that are just out of this world crazy. Same thing with Fernando Tatis Jr. We saw him get the mega deal. What was it, like $400 million, something like 14 years, something like that. I forget the exact contract logistics, but it's a guy who, obviously, the Padres trust. They gave him the huge contract. I've got to put him in there. So I feel like it's a tie here because these three guys are very close. They're rising stars, all three of them. They're all three young. And to be honest, they're all three on teams that have a legitimate shot to be a playoff team. Braves, obviously, were a 1 win away from making the World Series. We obviously saw the Padres with them stacked rotation now with Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Chris Paddock, and Joe Musgrove. With their stacked rotation and their stacked batting order with obviously, Machado, who has played well there. I got to admit, a good year last year. I don't like him, but he has played well there. Obviously, like I mentioned, Tatis. And then, when Austin Nola's healthy at catcher, very good catcher defensively and offensively, guys like that on the Padres. And you got guys on the Nationals, like I mentioned earlier, that, obviously they struggled last season, but they do got good guys on that team as well. Turner, Scherzer, if Strasburg can stay healthy, like I've mentioned, Juan Soto, and they also have a good coaching staff too that is good with young players. So I really believe that all three of these teams can be teams that can all make strong pushes towards the playoffs. That's what I believe. Obviously, Robles in the outfield. Nationals got a lot of good young talent. Last year, I think it was a little bit of a rocky year coming off of the World Series, 60-game season. A little bit of a hangover, but I think they'll be back at it this year again. So that's my NL MVP. I'm not going to get crazy into the numbers because there's three players, but all I'm saying is that's my NL MVP. I at first was going to go Acuna, and then I kind of thought of more players, and I was like, you know what, Soto, Tatis. The reason I didn't put Betts on this list is just like I said, he's a little bit older. He's still very good, but I kind of went with the younger guys. I kind of went with the guys that I believe are some of the best guys to watch. And like I said, the MLB has a lot of those guys, and sports sometimes needs those guys. The NFL has Patrick Mahomes, a guy that you're going to have your eyes glued to the TV screen whenever he's out there on the field. And, a guy like, in the NHL, you got guys like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid, who are some of the best players we've seen in a long time. In the NBA, you have guys like, you have so many different players. There's so many different guys in the NBA. I could just go off of the Nets with Kyrie, Harden, and KD. Together, they're very fun to watch. They're guys that you're going to be wanting to watch when you get the chance to. And the MLB, guys like Acuna, guys like Tatis, guys like Trout, even guys like Judge and stuff like that. When they're up at bat, when they're in the field, you're always going to want to watch them because they're always going to be making a spectacular play. So that's how I look at it. So that's my AL and ML MVP. Mike Trout, Acuna, Soto, Tatis Jr. Mike Trout for the AL. NL will be Soto, Tatis, and Acuna, or Acuna, Soto, Tatis. No particular order, by the way. I just put them in that order. That doesn't mean who I think's going to win it is Acuna. No, it's no particular order. I very well could see Acuna winning it, but I could see all three of these guys winning it. So that's that. Then we're going to get into Cy Youngs here. So I'm going to first off tell you that my Cy Young is two New York pitchers. I'm just going to kind of get a jump start on that. That both of my AL and NL Cy Youngs are both pitchers that play in New York. Obviously, they're both pitchers, but both pitchers that play in New York. So, my two pitchers. Let me just tell you. Okay, so my AL Cy Young, I have Garrett Cole, and my NL Cy Young, I have Jacob Degrom. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of both here. So let's get to the AL first with Cole, and then I'll get to Degrom. I'll tell you what. Even though the Yankees and the Mets, obviously, even though the Yankees and the Mets fans and the teams and, Yankees fans don't like the Mets and Mets fans don't like the Yankees and stuff like that, you got to respect the fact that the Mets fans Yankees fans like me got to respect that the Mets got a true pitcher in Jacob Degrom, and Mets fans got to respect the fact that the Yankees got a true pitcher in Garrett Cole, and that's the truth. And I've always said this about Degrom, about how good he is. He's one of my favorite Mets. I actually like Degrom, even though he's on the Mets. Not a big fan of many other Mets players, but I do like Degrom. And like I said, with back to Cole here, I have Garrett Cole winning Cy Young. And I know last season he obviously didn't win the Cy Young. He was still an All-MLB second team. Obviously, he had a good year last year. But obviously, he had a good year last year. It was the 60-game season. I think he could even have a better year this year. Give him the full 162, the full spring training and all that stuff, the full ramp-up period. I really believe Cole is going to have a really good year. Cole, don't get me wrong, had a very good year last year. Went 7-3, which was tied for third in the MLB. I don't really care about win-loss record. I think it's one of the most useless stats in sports. Then he had 2.84 ERA, which was also solid. It was good for Cole. He could definitely even be better. Obviously, there's years where he had it all the way down to 250. But he could even be better. But obviously, 284 I thought was really, really, really good. He had 94 strikeouts and a whip of .96, which was also pretty solid. So like I said, you give him the full 162. I think he could even increase those stats even more. Maybe get the ERA down to 260, 270. But, obviously, last season with the only 60-game season, obviously with a little bit of the interesting pitching staff and you had guys moving up and down, it might have been a little hard for him to kind of really gain his traction being on a new team, with all the pressure and all that stuff. But he had a good year last year, and I tell you what, I can't complain. He had a good year last year. Did he have the best year of his career? No, he probably had that the year before that. But you also got to realize he only started 12 games because it was a 60-game season. And you see season average, he averaged about 26 starts. So that's 14 more starts. That could very well be 14 more opportunities to lower the ERA, get more strikeouts, and have a better whip. So I have Garrett Cole winning AL Cy Young. I know some people might lean towards Lucas Giolito and guys like that, but I think even Hyun-Jin Ryu, when he's on, he's very good. But I would mostly say right now it's Garrett Cole. I know Lucas Giolito had a good year last year, but I got to see if he can consistently produce because he had a very good year last year. He's been solid throughout his career. I got to see if he consistently can produce like he did last season. So I have Garrett Cole winning the Cy Young. Then NL Cy Young, I have Jacob Degrom also winning the Cy Young. I think this is very obvious. I think he's one of the best, if not the best pitcher in baseball. And, this is a guy who, night in and night out. And you also got to realize, Jacob Degrom, too, he was doing it without any offense, a couple years when he won it, obviously, which is why I think, almost like, look at this. The win-loss record for Jacob Degrom was 4-2. That's the most useless stat ever. Who cares? Because he still had a 2.38 ERA. He had the second most strikeouts in the MLB with 104. He had the seventh best ERA in MLB with a 2.38 ERA. That was the seventh best in MLB. So two of the major stat categories, strikeouts and ERA, he was top 7 in, top 2 in one of the categories. Jacob Degrom, 32 years old. Obviously he's a little bit older, but this is a guy too that's still getting the job done. He's going out there night in and night out. Also had 12 starts last season, 2.38 ERA. Which was just something that was just insane. And obviously, in 2018, when he had a 1.70 ERA, that was also insane. It's a guy whose season average about 2.61 ERA in his season average. And this is a guy that's just going to go out there night in, night out as well. And, and throw the ball high. And throw the ball, he's a very fast pitcher. This is a guy, too, that in spring training has already hit 100 on the gun a couple times. So, Jacob Degrom does it all speed, fastball. And Garrett Cole and Degrom, I feel like, are similar in a way. They both got they both got high powering fastballs, but they also got really nasty knockout stuff. The sliders, the curves, really good spin rate, really good spin move on both those pitches. So Garrett Cole and Degrom, I feel like, not similar, meaning in the way like they pitch, but similar in the type of pitches they throw. They both got really good fastballs. Cole last season, I believe, hit 99 to 100 a couple times on the gun in the regular season. And, obviously we've already seen Degrom hit 100 a couple times in spring training. So, obviously, Obviously, they both got really quick fastball, but they also got really good off-speed knockout stuff. So, both very solid pitchers, and those are my two Cy Young winners, AL and NL. And then let's get into Rookie of the Year. So, let's get into Rookie of the Year. So, my AL Rookie of the Year. Now, this one I want to make clear here. So, Randy Rosarina, I have winning Rookie of the Year. And I know that last season, he obviously did play. He obviously played a little bit with the Cardinals, a little bit with the Rays. Last season, he did obviously play with the Rays in the postseason and stuff, and mainly the postseason. Obviously, it was good. A very good postseason. I mean, he batted 377 in the postseason. He had one of the best postseasons we've seen in a long time. So obviously, he was very good in the postseason, obviously, and he played 20 of his 23 games last season in the postseason. So, obviously, this is a guy who's still, considered a rookie. He's still in the conversation for Rookie of the Year. So I have a Randy Rosarina. I mean, what this guy did last season was, unlike some other players we've seen. This guy's only 26 years old. Obviously, this offseason, he got into some of the off-the-field stuff, had a little bit of an off-the-field issue, but this is a guy that if he could just focus on baseball, if he could just focus on getting the job done at the plate, is a guy who we saw in the postseason, he can light it up. I mean, he lit up some of the best pitchers in baseball. In the World Series, he was able to hit off of guys like Walker Buehler and guys like that. It was hard, but he got the job done. Did they win the series? No, but he was able to get some good at-bats, quality at-bats against some of the best pitchers in baseball. He hit well off against all the Yankees pitchers. The Yankees don't have the best pitching staff, but you're talking about a guy in Garrett Cole. He had a couple hits off of Garrett Cole. So it's a guy who hit off of some of the best pitchers in baseball at some of the most key times in the season, and that was ultimately the postseason. Like I said, he played 23 games last season. 20 of those 23 games were played in the playoffs throughout the wild card, or throughout the divisional round, the wild card, the championship series, and obviously the World Series. This is a guy that last season total in 2020 season, he batted .281 with 7 home runs, 11 RBIs, and a 1.022 OPS. That was in the regular season, 23 games played. Now, obviously, that was last season. You go to the postseason. He had 10 home runs in the postseason. So 10 of his 11 home runs last season came in the postseason. He had 14 RBIs. Regular season, he only had 11, I believe. 14 RBIs. He only struck out about 19 times. He had .377 batting average. He had an OPS, just slugging percentage of 831, which was just amazing. And an OPS of 1.273. That was just unreal. You don't see those numbers every day. Obviously, 10 home runs, had 3 doubles, 14 RBIs, 8 walks, and a triple. 29 hits in 29 hits in 20 games. It was just unreal to watch. It was really crazy to watch, and it's a guy who's already got a good amount of postseason experience, considering he's only been in the league 2 years. 81 at-bats in the postseason. Obviously, 1 year was with the Cardinals. He only had 4 at-bats, and obviously 2020 was with the Rays, but they did make a deep run. They made it to the World Series. So he's already had some postseason experience. I will give the AL Rookie of the Year to Randy Rosarina. I know there's some people out there that say, can he keep it up and stuff? I do. I especially think now the Rays are going to need his bat even more now that they lost Blake Snell and lost Charlie Morton. I have an odd feeling that pitching staff, even though they still got Tyler Glass now, it's just not the same pitching staff as they had last season. They had 3 really good pitchers. They had Morton, Blake Snell, and Glass now. They had Snell, who had really good off-speed stuff. They had Morton, who could, he was a really good pitcher also with the off-speed, but was really able to, had a good fastball location with the fastball. And you had Tyler Glass now, who was one of the more harder throwers we saw in the postseason. That guy would hit up to the high 90s, high 90s. I don't know if he hit 100. I'm sure he did hit 100 at least once in the postseason, but I do know he hit high 90s. Now they only have the hard-throwing Tyler Glass now, and a lot of other young players, but, you can't always guarantee those young players are going to be key assets. But, they do got a good young team, the Rays do. So I'll give the Rookie of the Year to Randy Rosarina. Then the National League Rookie of the Year, I actually drafted him in fantasy, Dylan Carlson. So Dylan Carlson also last season, if I can get to him here. Dylan Carlson also last season. He had a good. He had a good year. He had an all right year for coming in And he didn't play much. He didn't play much last season. So I actually picked him up in fantasy. He was kind of a late round addition, just the guy, kind of a depth addition. I actually found out now that Voit and Jimenez are both going to hit the IL to start the season. I've got another guy, Austin Nola, who hit the IL. So right now in fantasy baseball, I have 3 players before the season has already started on my IL. There's only 3 IL spots. So Dylan Carlson's going to be a guy that's going to see the starting lineup a lot on my baseball team. I thought on my fantasy baseball team, I thought he would be a guy that's going to be a depth addition. Come to find out that he's going to probably be a guy that's going to be, and he very well could be in starting outfielder on opening day, just because of all my other injuries and all the other situations going on there. So, but last season he played 35 games with the 60-game season. He had 110 at bats, 22 hits. He batted 200. He wasn't the best, but this is a guy too. Once again, he only played 35 games in a 60-game season. He played, which was more than half. 5 games above the halfway point. So, is a guy who last season was still learning. He brings power. He's 22 years old. He's 6'3", 22 years old. So he's still relatively young. He's still a guy that got a very good power. And obviously, he's a left fielder. So, he gives you some outfield depth. He gives you, he gives you some good outfield. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to be quick. He's still young, so he's still got time to grow, because the Cardinals, I feel like, are on that transition phase where they've had a lot of veteran guys the past couple years. Now they're kind of moving towards a young phase, but they're still being at a competitive level while doing. And that's hard to do for some of these teams, because a lot of these teams, they're competitive. Like, a lot of these teams, when they go from a veteran phase to a young phase, they really struggle. But the Cardinals have been able to go from a veteran phase to a younger phase and still be able to keep up. Obviously, they got Nolan Arenado this offseason, still be able to keep up a competitive winning. So, obviously, last season he didn't have the best year. 3 home runs, 200 batting average, which wasn't ideal. He still had 110 at-bats, which is another reason for, possibly, having a good year this season. He had 110 at-bats last season and 35 games played. That's a lot more than some rookies, and, he's already kind of got a little bit of a head start, I would say. And, he got an opportunity last season. Did he take the fullest of it? I don't know, but he's one of the top, he's one of the higher prospects for them. And I think this, for a guy who's 22 years old, you got to give him an opportunity. You can't just go ahead and say, oh, he struggled in the 62-game season, or 60-game season, sorry. He struggled in a 60-game season. He only had a 200 batting average and had 110 at-bats and, 35 games and stuff. Oh, well, this guy isn't good. No, you got to give him an opportunity. He only played 35 games in a 162-game season. He's going to play a lot more. He's getting a lot more opportunities. He got a full spring training this year. So I really believe that this is a guy that's going to very well be, if not win it, he's going to be definitely in the top 3, top 5 conversation for NL Rookie of the Year, and that is Dylan Carlson. So my MLB Awards predictions are: AL MVP, I have Mike Trout. NL MVP, like I mentioned earlier, I have Ronald Acuna, Juan Soto, and Fernando Tatis Jr. AL Cy Young, I have Garrett Cole. NL Cy Young, I have Jacob Degrom. AL Rookie of the Year, I have Randy Rosarina. And AL Rookie of the Year, Randy Rosarina. And an NL Rookie of the Year, I have Dylan Carlson, like I just mentioned. Comment down below your awards predictions if you want to give me all of them, or just give me the MVP or all that good stuff, or what your thoughts are on mine. Like I said, no big surprises here. Maybe the one surprise was the NL MVP, because maybe some people think Mookie Betts should be it. Some people think Seager could be it. Some people very well might think that, Acuna, Soto, and Tatis should stand alone. But I have them 3. I think they're very close. They're good on the defense side of the ball, and they're very good on the offense side of the ball. It's so close, and you look at the numbers, they're so hard to, you look at the numbers, they're just so hard. Soto, very good in the field. Tatis, very good in the field. Acuna, very good in the field. They've all got excellent power, and it got very, very good at the plate. So it was tough to choose, but I went ahead and just put all 3 of them there. So that is my awards predictions, and when all the awards come out at the end of the year, I guess I will see if I'm right or wrong. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I'm right with the majority of them. I think it's. I know some people might go ahead and say, oh, Lucas Giolito, or a guy like Soto or something like that should stand alone, but I got to see. Some of these guys last season had really good years, but you got to see if they can build consistency. It was an odd year last year, 60-game season. Some of these guys broke out and had amazing years. Well, I got to see if they can continue that, So, but with all that being said, that will do it for that portion of the podcast. Obviously, comment down below your thoughts on mine, or you can comment down below yours as well. But coming up next, I'm going to get into the new NFL schedule. So the new NFL schedule has been released. I mean, not officially released, like the schedule hasn't been released, but the NFL has released the plan for the new schedule, adding 17 games and adding one more week. Adding one more week and a bye week as well, obviously, which they've always had a bye week. So 17-game season. I'm excited for it. I think it's a good idea. Some players aren't. I will talk about that coming up next. Alrighty, the NFL has decided to extend. Now, this doesn't come by surprise. As a matter of fact, I don't think this is much of a shock. I think we were just waiting for this to happen. But the NFL has decided to come out and has decided to extend the season. So there's been talks about this for a pretty long time now, about the whole extending the season, adding one extra week. Because if you really think about it, and not saying that you can put a 162-game season or in a 82-game season into the NFL. And everyone always asks sometimes, why in the world is the NFL season so short? Well, you got to realize football is a very, very heavy contact sport. And you've gotten people sometimes that ask or, always brainstorm, because March Madness, for example, like people always ask about, why can't the NFL do something about the March Madness or do something like the March Madness? Well, you can't do that because, college, football, it's something that after you play a game, you can't play football every single day. You can't possibly have a game every single day. It's hard enough for these players to have a game on a Sunday and come back, quick turn around and play on a Thursday. It's hard enough for them. Or play on a Monday, quick turn around and play on a Saturday game or something like that. So whatever the case may be. But it's hard enough for some of these guys. So, obviously, the NFL, this has been a talk for a really long time about extending the season. Some NFL players, including I'm not an NFL player, but some players and fans, including myself, not a big fan of preseason. And the NFL has had talks about completely removing preseason and having and adding 2-3 extra weeks to the NFL season. And the reason this is because a lot of times in preseason, you see guys get injured. And for example, a guy like Jermaine Kearse a couple years ago, he was with the Jets, then he went to the Lions, was in a preseason game. Only had one or two, was only getting one or two possessions. Ended up tearing his ACL. He was done for the year. I have no clue where he is now. But he ended up tearing his ACL, done for the year. I believe he was only on a 1-year contract, so that was it for him with the Detroit Lions. And a lot of players are frustrated. Players who get injured are frustrated. When you miss part of the year, it's frustrating because he got injured in a meaningless game in preseason. So there's been a lot of talks for past couple years about not even the past couple years, for a long time, there's been talks about completely removing the preseason and adding 2, 3, maybe even 4 extra weeks to the regular season. And obviously just going straight on, having about training camp starting in June, ending really in September, and just going ahead, no preseason games, do some scrimmages against each other, but not much contact stuff, go into the regular season, obviously with a full training camp under your belt and all that good stuff. So obviously that was the case. And last season, actually, players tended to struggle a little bit with the injuries without a little bit of a preseason. So it was interesting. Last year, obviously, with the shortened off season, you actually saw more injuries. You saw a lot of guys tearing their ACLs. You saw a lot of guys with those type of injuries, non-contact injuries. I mean, it's the truth. You saw guys, Joey Bosa, for example. He was the guy that, he was running around the line, tweaked his knee, and boom, just like that, he tore his ACL. It was a lot of non-contact stuff. It was a lot of stuff that, just weren't fully ready for the season to come because they didn't have a full off season with the whole, virus situation. They were only able to have, a little bit of a part, off-season training and stuff, and then they got ready. It's like, a lot of these guys, hamstrings and stuff like that, a lot of that stuff happened. I go to former Jet, Le'Veon Bell, guy in the first week of the season, pulls hamstring. I mean, that was just something that just happened. I mean, he pulled his hamstring first week of the season, right? So, it was a lot of non-contact stuff, a lot of stuff like that. But, which some people say it was just because of the shortened, off season. Some people say it was because there was no preseason, there was no live game action. But at the same time, you could have a point, too, where with live action and preseason, they do get injured. So, this has been a conversation for a while. But I'm personally, the NFL reportedly to announce 17-game regular season schedule this week. I like the idea of adding an extra week, right? Because the NBA, 82-game season, that's a lot of games. The MLB, 162-game seasons, that's a lot of games. The NHL, 82 games, a lot of games. Obviously, this season's a little shortened, 72 for both the NBA and the NHL, 162 for MLB. Was the regular 17 last season for the NFL. Regular 17 weeks. Right, the NFL, you're not going to expect the NFL to play 162 games a team, right? You just can't do that in the NFL. But the NFL season is very short, and we all know that. It's very short. It's a very short season. I mean, it starts in September and really ends in December. As for the MLB season, it starts in April and ends in September. It's a little big, really, to be honest, when the NFL season's starting, the MLB season's just ending, to kind of put it in perspective, which is crazy, given that, I mean, that's a long time. We start now in April with the MLB season, and we're going to end all the way in September when the NFL season is really just starting. So that's how crazy it is. It goes all through now, all through the summer, and into, obviously October and stuff like that. No need to go through that. But the NFL season is short. It's very short. And, that's why every game counts that much more in the NFL week by week. And that's why if you get off to a 2-3, 1-4 start in the NFL, your season's likely done because you're only going to have a little bit more games left to go, and you're going to need to win. That's why you need to win as many games as you can, right? In the NFL, in the MLB, if you fall to a little bit of a 5-game, 6-game losing streak, that's not going to hurt you that much. In the NFL, if you lose 5-6 straight games, that's a problem. That could very well be your season right there. So that's the problem with the NFL, is it's so short. Now, adding 1 week isn't going to make much of a difference, but it's still adding 1 week, and it's still giving players, coaches, teams an extra opportunity to try to fit into the playoffs. They obviously extended the playoffs last season, and extended it last season, and now they're extending an extra week. So I feel like this gives teams, some of these teams that might be on the outside looking in, an extra opportunity. Because, for example, last season, the Dolphins didn't make the playoffs. You give them 1 extra week, they could very well be in. It could cause some, different scenarios. So as it stands right now, it looks like there's going to be 17 games, I believe 18 weeks. I don't imagine it's going to be 17 games in 17 weeks because you need a bye week. So I'd imagine it's going to be 17 games, 18 weeks. So let's read this quick article here. Some player, Alvin Kamara, or some players, Alvin Kamara, obviously big name player, expressed some of his frustration, which you can get from a player standpoint. Obviously these players, the injuries and playing an extra week and then got to go into the playoffs like that and stuff like that. It could be tough on these guys. It could be hard on these guys, bodies and stuff like that. So, but as a fan, I love it. I mean, if we got 20 weeks of football, I'd be perfectly okay with it. But obviously with the whole scheduling stuff, it's hard to do. So, but I do like this. I like the idea of adding an extra week. It gives an opportunity for some teams. For example, last year, the Dolphins, outside looking in, you give them 1 extra week, they could have made the playoffs, depending on how that extra week unfolds, right? So, 16 games is just such a short season. And, 5-6 games into the season, you usually know who's going to be in. I'm sure you could do it, but I'm sure 5-6 games into the season for the NFL is probably the equivalent to over half the year or almost the equivalent to 40, 50 games in the NFL, in the MLB. That's just crazy. That's how crazy it is, how short of a season it is. So, 5-6 games, it's, 5-6 games in a season, if your team's standing at 2-3, well, you're going to have, or 2-4, you're going to have to try to make some sort of a turnaround. If your team's standing at 4-2, well, you're going to have to continue to get better. But NFL reportedly to announce 17-game regular season schedule this week. The NFL will reportedly announce its expansion to a 17-game regular season this week, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Mark Mask of the Washington Post reported in February that the league considered making the change as well as reducing the number of preseason games from 4 to 3 as soon as the 2021 season. Jeff Kerr of CBS Sports. While the makeup of the regular season hasn't changed since 1978, when the league moved from 14 games to the current 16-game format and dropped from 6 preseason contests to 4, the NFL schedule did look different in 2020, with an expanded postseason field from 14 teams compared to 12. Peter King of NBC ran through some of the major expectations for a 17-game season on February 28th. There will be no extra bye week. There will be 17 games across 18 weekends, which is exactly what I said earlier. So there's going to remain one bye week, 17 games, 18 weeks. The Super Bowl schedule for February 6th will likely be pushed 1 week to February 13th, which because you need to add the extra week in there. The two conferences are expected to alternate hosting the extra week of the season every year. The AFC will have the honors of hosting the 17 game in 2021. Through Mask reported Friday that may change in 2022, when the league wants to use some of those games as neutral site contests for international play. So as I mentioned earlier, as I said earlier in the pod, or I don't know if I've said this earlier, but 16 games. There's 8 home games and 8 road games when you have 16 games. 17 games, it's an odd number. So one team's going to have 9 home games and the other team's going to have 8. Now, there's very well an opportunity where there's going to be neutral site games, so you have 8 home games, 8 away games, and 1 neutral site game. On paper, someone will be home, but you're technically not home if you're at a neutral site, which would more than likely be those international games in London. There was a Mexico game a couple years ago. So that's all got to play itself out. I don't imagine that's going to happen this year. That could very well happen next season, 2022 season, not this upcoming season. So, for example, the Jets might have 9 home games and 8 road games, but the Giants might have 8 home games and 9 road games. I would love for the Jets to have an extra 9 home games. Right? So it might be different. Which is a little bit harder for some of these teams. You know, it's a little bit of a disadvantage and advantage at the same time. But 1 home game, I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference, especially if there's only a limited capacity in the fan stadium. So you'll see. We'll see how it goes. But King also reported that Game 17 will be played between cross-conference opponents based on the 2020 standings, per John Breach of CBS Sports, that sets up the following matchups. So based on the standings, you'll have... Obviously, like for example, the first place teams play first place and all that stuff. So AFC East will play NFC East. So here's how it's going to line up. So Packers at Chiefs, Bears at Raiders, Vikings at Chargers, Lions at Broncos, Seahawks at Steelers, Rams at Ravens, Cardinals at Browns, 49ers at Bengals, Saints at Titans, Buccaneers at Colts, Panthers at Texans, Falcons at Jaguars, Washington at the Bills, Giants at Dolphins, Cowboys at Patriots, and Eagles at Jets. So those would be your matchups. As it stands right now, the Jets would have that 9 home games. Per Mask, NFL owners are expected to vote on the new schedule Tuesday and Wednesday. So that would be today and tomorrow. I assume it goes through. I know some of the players like Alvin Kamara have expressed frustration. They don't like it. I mean, it's more football, though. I mean, to be honest. And I'm sure their salaries, because they get per game, I'm sure they're going to go up a little bit as well. But that's all that logistics will work itself out as we get closer and closer to the season. Right now, that's the plan. Is the schedule I just read, is that going to be the case? I have no clue. That's just how they think it might work out, which is right, because the AFC East would play the NFC East, AFC South would be the NFC South, AFC West would be the NFC West, and the AFC North would be the NFC North. So I think that would be the right thing to do. Instead of doing an AFC East game to an AFC South game or something, right? Something like that. Like the Jets play the Chiefs, right? Or the Jets play the Packers. Like, no, there's no need for that. I think you do AFC, NFC. And obviously, you would switch because eventually, believe, it might be next season, actually, the AFC will play all the NFC teams. So, but we'll see how it all goes. I'm excited for it. I think, we always talk about how quick the season goes, and we always talk about how quick the season goes and how it's frustrating sometimes when the season ends so quickly almost, right? Especially if you're, a fan like me who the Jets have not made the playoffs in a long time. In 11 years? So we haven't seen playoff football in a very long time. So you got to look at it as, really it's the regular season and then you got to watch postseason football of the other teams. Postseason football is fun, but obviously, when you're a fan of the team, the Jets, who haven't made it in a long time, in 11 years, I believe. You like that extra week. So, but I think it's a good idea, and gives you an extra week. It will bump back the Super Bowl, but I don't think that's the end of the world. It's gonna bump back the Super Bowl a little bit, but like I said, that's not something I don't think to be too crazy, too angry about. Because realistically, it would almost be like the same thing. You're just adding an extra week, and then the Super Bowl will be on like that same week. You'll have the playoffs, then you have the bye week, which is the Pro Bowl, then you have the Super Bowl. So it will be a week later, but it won't really feel like that because you'll have each week will be the same amount of games and playoffs and all that stuff. So it's going to be interesting. The one thing that I think is if teams are going to have a problem with having one extra home game. And, home field advantage, even without fans, it's not much of a thing. But obviously, many stadiums now are transitioning now to having limited capacity. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it's a great idea. I'm excited. I think it's a great idea. So when the football season comes around again, I think it's going to be a good idea. I think it's going to be a good idea to, obviously have games and have an extra week of games, and I think it will be good to see some extra football. I think that's going to be a good idea. So comment down below your thoughts on that, and then we'll get into the New York sports update. So as for yesterday in college basketball, Baylor won and Houston won. Oregon State rallied late against Houston, outscored them by 11 in the second half, but the just weren't able to get the job done. Houston won, and Baylor took care of business, no problem. As for today, we got Gonzaga against USC. I give Gonzaga the win. I think Gonzaga will continue their streak of undefeated. So I will give Gonzaga the win, and then Michigan UCLA. This one's tough because I do strongly believe that UCLA could very well knock off Michigan. And call me crazy for saying that. Michigan's a very good team. But if you've seen UCLA play, an underdog coming in, they've been playing really well. This is a team that was one of the first four teams. So they were a team that had to play that first four game. They beat Michigan State. They were actually underdogs in that game, I believe. They beat Michigan State. They won the first round, won the second round, won Sweet 16, and now here on the Elite Eight. And we saw them beat Alabama, who many people have making a deep run. I don't see why they won't beat Michigan. I guess Michigan's definitely the favorite. This one's almost a toss-up. This is going to be a close game. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I really don't. I don't think this is going to be a one-sided Michigan smokes UCLA. Because UCLA, they're coming in with a chip on their shoulder. Right? They're a team right now. They're still underdogs. They're still underdogs. They're 7-point underdogs. And maybe Michigan gets caught looking ahead. I'm just telling you right now, Michigan probably will win. I would guess, but I'm just telling you right now, I would not be surprised at all to see UCLA win this game. And they would get to the Final Four, but it would be tough, obviously, to try and beat Gonzaga. But I'm telling you, UCLA right now, they're hot. They're on a roll right now. So I wouldn't mess around with UCLA. They're one of the hottest teams in the tournament right now outside of Gonzaga. And, if you're talking about right now, hottest teams, UCLA is definitely up there. So it's going to be a good game. So that's what I got for college basketball. And then Saturday, the game is already set, which will be Baylor-Houston. 1-2 matchup, I think. I didn't see, actually. I don't know if I saw that. Did I expect that to happen? No, I actually had Baylor-Illinois. Baylor-Illinois I had. Which makes sense which is why. So right now, actually, my Final Four is actually doing well. I guess, right now, if Michigan wins today, 3 of my 4 final team for Gonzaga is going to get the win. I'm not worried about Gonzaga losing. I think Gonzaga is going to win it all. But right now, as it stands, I have Gonzaga I got correct. So Gonzaga Final Four would be correct. If Michigan wins today, that would be correct. Baylor's obviously in, Illinois isn't. So the only thing here was Illinois. And I had Houston getting to the Elite Eight. So my bracket, even though it got busted in the early rounds, very well, my Final Four is almost 3 out of 4 correct with the 4 teams remaining. It could be Gonzaga, Michigan, Baylor. It's already Baylor. and Houston. I got Baylor correct. I think Gonzaga's going to win, and then Michigan wins. So, even though my bracket's not fully correct, if the teams that win today, if Michigan and Gonzaga wins, I'm 3 out of 4. So I guess that's pretty good. I mean, I don't think anyone had UCLA get into the Elite Eight. Not many people did. So, but now we get to the NBA here. Yesterday, the Clippers won, Warriors won, Jazz won, Kings won, Pistons won, Grizzlies won, Mavericks won, Pelicans won, Heat won, and the Wizards won. The Nets also won yesterday, 112-107. We moved to 32-15 on the season. Another big win, 38 points by Harden, another triple-double. Kyrie with 27 points. Brown and DJ both had 10, and Jeff Green had 10 as well. It was a good game for the Nets. Harden led the way with 38 points and a triple-double. So, good win there. And as for today, we got the Hornets-Wizards. I'll give Hornets the win. Nuggets, 76ers, I'll give Nuggets the win. Suns-Hawks, give Suns the win. And Clippers-Magic, give Clippers the win. As for the NHL, yesterday, the Sharks won, Jets won, Golden Knights won, Avalanche won, Flyers won, Penguins won, and Oilers won. And as for today's game, we got the Lightning, Blue Jackets, I'll give Lightning the win. Bruins, Devils, I'll give Bruins the win. Canadians, Oilers, give Canadians the win. Panthers, Red Wings, I'll give Panthers the win. Hurricanes, Blackhawks, give Hurricanes the win. And Stars, Predators, give Stars the win. Rangers also play today. Rangers coming in this game 15-15-4. Capitals coming in this game 23-7-4. This game comes on today, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC, DC, and you can also find this game on MSG. The over-under is 6 for this game. Crazy. They have the Rangers as favorites in this game, which I find wild. I believe they're favorites. So, yeah, 52% of people are predicting the Rangers to win. Which is interesting because the Rangers just lost to the Capitals and we lost to the Flyers. I mean, like I said, if the Rangers come out and play like they have something, the Rangers, the Rangers are inconsistent. Which is understandable with a young team. Young team building consistency is tough to do, but in a 56-game season, you got to try to find consistency. So I guess the Rangers, 52% of the people are going with them. Hopefully they're correct, so I guess I'll go with the Rangers here. But I'm surprised they're favorites. I'm really surprised that they're favorites because I'm really surprised that they're favorites. I mean, the Rangers are head-to-head. They are 3-2 against the Capitals. So the Rangers this season are 3-2 against the Capitals this season. But still, the Capitals are, in their last 10, they're 9-1, and they're on a 3-game win streak. So, but hey, the Rangers have been able to find some success against the Capitals, which I got to admit. And maybe you go off of how the game ended last time, where the Rangers had good, solid momentum going. We'll see how it all plays out. But as for yesterday in the MLB, Dodgers won, Brewers won, Rockies won, Mariners, Reds tied, Cubs won, Giants won, Royals won, Blue Jays won, Twins won, Astros, Nationals tied, Red Sox won, Rays won, Mets, Cardinals tied. Yankees lost yesterday 5-2. We moved to 14-12-2 in spring training, and we finished spring training with that record. So that was that. Today though, we have our final spring training games are on today. We got the Twins Pirates. I'll give Twins the win. Rays Tigers. I'll give Rays the win. Red Sox Braves, give Red Sox the win. Brewers Rangers, give Brewers the win. Rockies White Sox, give Rockies the win. Indians Diamondbacks, give Indians the win. And Dodgers Angels, give Dodgers the win. So that's what I got there. And we'll head into fantasy basketball and hockey here. So as for fantasy basketball, I'm currently winning 289 to 239. Today I've got going Trae Young and Bradley Beal. And injury update here. Bradley Beal's day-to-day. Bradley Beal hip. Beal hip is unavailable for Monday's game against the Pacers. So he was out yesterday. We'll see if any news come on him there. Yeah. So Bradley Beal, I need him going. And as for fantasy hockey, I'm currently losing 21-10. But today I've got going Mika Zibanejad, Steven Stamkos, Artemi Panarin, Braden Point, Nicholas Backstrom, Joe Pavelski, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Jeff Petrie, Shea Weber, and Adam Larson. And that's what I got there. Hopefully I can make a comeback in fantasy hockey. I've been rolling 7-4 in fantasy hockey. But, doesn't always... Fantasy hockey is interesting because one week you'll go off, like you have 130 points, and then the next week you'll just, you just don't get the job done, I guess, is what I want to say. But hopefully I can win. I mean, 21-10, it's not crazy. I mean, that's not a crazy lead. And I've got the majority of my team going today. So, because there wasn't many games on yesterday, or there was a couple games on yesterday, but I only had like 3 or 4 players going. Today I've got like 7 or 8, so hopefully I can gain some ground and take the lead there. But anyway, that's what I got for the podcast here today. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. It was another good podcast. The Mets and Francisco Lindor. So the Mets offered, I heard a little bit ago, the Mets offered Francisco Lindor like a 10-year, $300 million deal. But Francisco Lindor countered that deal and said that he wants 12 years, $385 million. So that's, I guess, one of the final kind of moves Lindor is going to make. Or he'll go through the season without an extension. So we'll see how it goes, but that could very well be something I'm talking about tomorrow if the deal does get done. So we'll get into all that, and obviously a lot more baseball stuff coming up, so it should be good. With all that being said, that will do it for the podcast here today. I will see you all back here tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.